I messed up tonight. I lost another fight. I still mess up, but I'll just start again. I keep falling down. I keep on hitting the ground. I always get enough to see what's next. Birds don't just fly, they fall down and get up. Nobody learns without getting it wrong. I won't give up, no I won't give in till I reach the end and then I'll start again. No I won't leave, I wanna try everything, I wanna try even though I could fail.
Hello, listeners! Welcome back to Zootopia Minute, the minute-by-minute podcast where we examine the hit Disney film of 2016, Zootopia, minute at a time. My name is Simul, and I will be your host, along with my wonderful co-host,
Choco, short for chocolate pony, or as my friend Aaron called me, chokehold pony.
Chokehold Pony. I saw that piece of art.
Yeah.
That was funny. So, for those following along, our timestamp for this minute, we are on minute 27, and that's going to be from 27:00 to 27:59.
So it's when she responds that she's doing great, and the beginning of her mother starts talking, and it ends when the moose is complaining about the ticket.
Yeah, so Judy had a nice long muzzle time conversation with her parents, ending on a depressing note, and she wants to just go to bed and wait for tomorrow. But her neighbors are loud. And then our minute ends on one final scene, which is presumably the next day, as she's handing out one final ticket to a very angry moose, who sounds like John DiMaggio. And I think it was probably John DiMaggio who voiced the moose.
One thing I actually did not know were, especially me being a genetic biologist, I started knowing this, but I didn't know mooses and deer were actually part of the same family.
Really? I would have assumed that. They both are like woodland animals with things growing out of their skull.
Yeah, but mooses look so much different, but I guess you could kind of see that caribou and reindeer are kind of like the
I thought those are just
medium
different
between
names for the same thing, caribou and reindeer.
It depends on which area.
Yeah, well, it's like how a cougar, a mountain lion, and a puma are all the same animal, too. It's just different colloquial names for
Puma. I don't own any Puma products. All right, let's go straight into the minute. So, okay, this is a funny minute because she's chatting with her parents. Her dad is cheering that she's a meter maid.
Yeah, so basically, if we look at where we left off from last minute was very sad. It's Judy feeling like a failure and disappointed with how life in the big city is really turning out to be versus her expectations. And her parents had just asked her, hey, how's your first day on the force? She sort of goes, yeah, it was so great. And her mom, of course, sort of jumps right into the issue at Judy's heart. Is it everything you hoped for? And we all know the answer is no. But Judy does this sort of thing that I think a lot of people who've had to talk with their parents over the phone are familiar with. She does this thing where she sort of is very vague in the response. You know, it's like, oh, it was great, you know, everyone's so nice, and I really like it here. You know, giving very vague information.
Yes.
Everyone is so nice. What does that have to do with the job at hand, you know?
I do the same thing as well. Every time my dad asks me, so what are you doing for a living? I'm like, oh, you know, I make money, I manage stuff, I travel around the country with my job, and you know, I don't specifically tell him I vend art at pony conventions.
Right. Like
or
how many
horse trade shows, he calls them.
How many people could describe their job that exact same way? Just, you know, at different levels of detail, basically. Well, it's like how when I worked at Starbucks, I used to just tell people I was a drug dealer.
Okay,
It's accurate.
Well,
Gotta get your caffeine fix. I'm your man.
sure. Did you actually work at? I'm guessing you didn't go for during the unicorn craze that's going on right now.
No, the unicorn frap, that never happened when I was working there. It's been a while since I worked there, but I did get a chance to try one out the other day. They're not bad. They're not great, but they're not bad.
I was hoping it would taste like cotton candy because cotton candy flavor shakes are my absolute favorite, but it's apparently mango flavor and sour mango flavor, which is...
Yeah.
It looks strange.
Yeah, and what's interesting is I would have to taste it again to see if it really is very mango-y, but when you're drinking it, you don't perceive it as mango, probably because of the color, right? Like if it was accompanied by a bright orange color, you'd be, oh, that's mango, but the lack of that, it just tastes like generic, vibrant fruit. It's kind of like how when you really think about it, does artificial grape or artificial orange, do those really taste like the real thing? Not supremely so, but the color of it sort of helps that illusion, and it sort of gets it into your head that, oh, this is grape flavored. You know, we'll all recognize an artificial grape flavor, even though it is kind of different from what real grapes taste like.
Unless we're talking about bananas, and the banana flavor that we were trying is actually an extinct line of banana that used to be very, very popular.
Bananas are good.
The gross myco banana, which used to be the biggest variety of banana in the world until the 50s when they all die out from some type of virus. So the banana flavor we're tasting in artificial bananas is an extinct banana that we could never try anymore. It's very sad.
Well, presumably we can still synthesize the flavors well enough, so it's not really an issue, I suppose.
For me, it just tasted like sour cream. All right.
But that frap is okay. It's not great, but it's okay. And I'm glad I don't have to be working there anymore because frappuccinos are difficult and they always threw me off my groove.
It actually reminded me when I was in military academy, they had a giant fruit bar that they put in the place of a salad bar one day, and I was really impressed. And they had a giant tub of like white whipped cream nearby. So I got a bunch of fruit, put a dollop of giant whipped cream on it, and I went to taste it, and I realized it wasn't whipped cream, it was sour cream.
Ah, that's going to be a bit different.
I wanted something sweet, and I got sour, and that's my impression of the unicorn frap. So
watch as you like actually invented something delicious, though. Like imagine if you'd done that, but it had been amazing, and it's like, oh my gosh, no one's ever tried putting sour cream on this before, and now I'm going to make all this money.
I'm more impressed of how chocolate was invented, because the process to actually make chocolate is so complex. You have to have so many accidental steps
about that too.
Of doing that, but we're going way off topic. Let's get back to the topic at hand.
So back to Judy's vaguing at her parents. Her vaguing is quickly interrupted by
vaguing. I love it.
One of them, I forget which one, pointing out, oh, she's wearing this highly reflective vest. Oh, is that what I think it is? Oh my gosh, our prayers have been answered. She's a meter maid. Hooray! Which they're so excited about because they're very protective of Judy. But Judy probably is not the thing she wants to be hearing right now.
That's the thing. Parents want their kids to be overachievers, but at the same time, they also want them to be very, very safe. And overachieving is dangerous in the big world. So it's kind of funny to see parents that want their kids to just kind of go for the bare minimum in this case.
Yeah. So I think my favorite part here is just where Judy's dad lets out a triumphant, oh, she's not a real cop. Thank goodness. And you just sort of see her face go, that's totally what I needed to hear right now. Yeah, thanks, guys. But I think we all can relate to that kind of thing, not hearing perhaps what we want to hear. I mean, she didn't want to talk to them in the first place. We know she was reluctant to even pick up the phone. And that's probably why maybe she was expecting exactly this kind of thing.
Which is how I feel. And actually, another thing I can easily relate to is the fact that when I do have such phone calls with my parents, and sometimes the phone call gets a little too loud, my neighbors could actually hear the conversation, or my roommate, and I'm like, oh, what an awkward situation to be in, because I kind of just had a long, either vague call with my family, or I had a little debate with my parents, and now everyone knows my personal life. So that's very fun.
Yeah, gotta be careful with those paper-thin walls. And the same thing does happen to Judy. Judy eventually just gets fed up with this nonsense from her parents and says, yeah, I gotta go. Okay, we'll let you get some rest, as parents are. They go to bed, back in Bunnyburrow, totally oblivious to Judy's emotional state. And Judy gets greeted by her neighbors, who have been listening in the whole time. But actually, before we get too far ahead there, one other thing I noticed is the use of language from her parents here. Our prayers have been answered. Have we had any sort of allusions to religion in the movie so far? I don't quite recall.
Didn't we have an episode called Furry Jesus already?
We did, but that was around Christmas. And that was just, we briefly said, what if they had Christmas, lol? But we didn't really get into it.
Yeah, do they have an equivalent of church or organized religion? And it would be interesting because, for example, if you play the Civ games or actually know anything about human history, the development of pantheons and then later organized religion is very, very important for the development of cultures and language. Mm-hmm. So possibly,
for sure.
if they have developed to a point of that level of society, they have to have some form of organized belief at one point. point in time. But do they have religion? We haven't seen it so far, and obviously it's a Disney movie, and they rarely address religion, except for that priest in the Little Mermaid movie that had what looked like a boner, so...
Oh my gosh. I'd nearly forgotten all about that. Thank you for bringing that image rushing back to my head. That's just what I needed. Thanks. So, Judys neighbors do hear this conversation through those paper-thin apartment walls, and this is when we realize we'd forgotten. The first thing we hear from one of her neighbors is, "Hey, can you turn off that depressing music?" And I don't know about you, but I'd totally forgotten that the music playing in the scene was playing on the radio. Yes. It was the final song that Judy landed on in the previous minute.
It's so meta because it's the movie soundtrack that's playing. But it's also playing on the radio, so when she turns it off, we don't know whether she actually turned off the radio and it just switched to a soundtrack that only we could hear, or if she actually turned to that soundtrack piece. But in this scene, it confirmed it's actually playing on the radio, so I think I love meta jokes like that. That was ingenious.
Yeah, for sure. And then we get a nice back and forth between the roommates again.
Which I love because the picture frames on the wall vibrate depending on who is arguing. That is a nice touch,
isn't it?
Yeah.
They shake to show who's talking. I still don't remember their names, but they do a nice little back and forth. Clearly, they've heard the entire conversation. "Oh, leave her alone. Don't you know she feels like a failure?" And then just a nice back and forth of, "Shut up. You shut up. You shut up. No, you shut up."
Now, if I was Judy, I would feel really, really bad if my neighbors thought I was a failure.
Right?
Oh, man. That was an ingenious scene. And it's her first day on the job, too, so she was so gung-ho about it. Now, how's she gonna feel the next day? We don't know.
Yeah, well, she does say, tomorrow's gonna be better. She whispers it to herself. And one of her neighbors responds, "Yeah, but it might be worse."
See, wouldn't that suck to live in a situation where even if you're quiet and talking to yourself, everyone can hear you?
Yeah, that would
And
suck.
I think that has happened before to me.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun at all.
It's probably happening right now. I'm wondering if my roommate can hear me. He probably does.
By the way, we can now confirm the clock on the radio does work because now it says 8:40 by the time the phone call finishes. So it's not broken. I guess she really did just microwave that carrot from the last minute for a very short amount of time.
And it kind of works because based on the clock, a minute has passed within the world of Zootopia and 2 minutes have passed within the span of our podcast. So there we go.
So that's just about where our minute ends. We have one final little glimpse of the next scene where it is the next morning and she gives out a ticket to an angry moose who says, "I was only 30 seconds over." And I'm so sure it's John DiMaggio. It had better be John DiMaggio. But I noticed two puns here. In the back, as it sort of zooms out from that moose at the very end, one of the movie theaters is playing Star Trunk, which we may have seen before, did we? We may have seen that joke before. I don't remember.
Yeah, we saw Star Trunk with the elephant ice cream place.
Yeah, so we did see that one, but then what we may not have seen is the cellular carrier on Judy's phone is PB plus J.
Yes,
or like
I
PB
noticed
ampersand J, like AT&T, kind of.
I wanted to address that as well because I was trying to think, is that actually a pun? Because we know it's a play on AT&T, but does PB and J have anything to do with
I think it's
animals?
arbitrary. I think they're just like, let's put something there that looks like a carrier that isn't. That's recognizable. It's like you put the ampersand in there, people are going to get that it's like AT&T.
So they're forcing a pun. So they're forcing a peanut butter and jelly pun.
It's not technically a pun. People say pun when they just mean any form of wordplay, but puns specifically involve words that sound like other words.
Well, if she was eating a PB&J while she was having the phone, it would be a visual pun.
I don't know about that.
BoJack does best visual puns, so if you guys want to see animal visual puns, look at BoJack. But yeah, I don't know if it works, but I do like that we saw the Star Trunk again. Going back to the moose, it's funny because I could identify with both situations. If I was Judy and having to just do my job and, put the parking tickets out, I would hate to have random people come and yell at me for, just doing my job. But if I was a moose and I was only 30 seconds over, hey, give a guy a break. I don't want to pay, $200 for a parking ticket when, I was right there. 30 seconds is not too long.
Yeah, it's a bit, And this is sort of the first time we see that Judy's dealing with problem citizens as well. Before, it seemed like she was having a real easy time with it.
Oh yeah, she was so excited to give out those 200 tickets readily.
I'm so excited to make people's days awful. I love it here.
It's funny. I was watching a Canadian broadcasting station's report on, I forgot which city in Canada, but they have really, really sketchy parking ticket laws. And they actually trick people to park in the wrong spot so they could pay for parking tickets. Like they had a park behind the sign posted right by a unused driveway. So it was an unused driveway that actually had a dip that goes down. And because it has a dip on the road, it's considered a crosswalk, even though there's no crosswalk on there. So everyone will park behind the sign because it says park behind the sign, but they technically park on the crosswalk by their definition, and it's just a place where they just could collect tickets.
Well, that's kind of shady.
And they do this a lot in this city, and they don't change it. They only finally changed that sign after the news report did that report on them.
Yikes.
But they did little things like this throughout their city. But so yeah, it's always a way to make money. So
very spooky, very shady. Well, I mean, that just about does it for the minute portion. But speaking of spooky, shady things, I believe some of you may be familiar hearing in the news about a lawsuit that recently came up involving Disney and involving Zootopia. So, Choco, you know more about this than I do, so why don't you sort of give people a summary of what's going on?
So, for those of you who actually do see my panels at cons, one of my favorite topics to talk about are lawsuits involving IPs and trademarks and similar stories across different company lines, especially lawsuits involved with Disney. My favorite is always talking about the Air Pirates versus Disney. So this one's a very, very interesting one to look at. So if you guys don't know, a screenwriter named Gary Goldman has had writing credits that have included Big Trouble in Little China, Navy SEALs, and Total Recall. He also was the writer and co-director of All Dogs Go to Heaven in the All Dogs Go to Heaven TV series.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So this is interesting because there have been very, very similar lawsuits filed against Disney and DreamWorks over the years. And seeing this, it's a very, very similar thing to what I've seen for the Kung Fu Panda lawsuit a few years back, if you guys heard about that. But he's alleging that he reportedly submitted a pitch to Disney, specifically through their animation company, about making an animated film set in a world very, very similar to Zootopia, where the different species and classes of animals will become metaphors for social classes within our human world and society. And not only that, it would play with similar themes about trying to achieve more than what you are worth in society, trying to achieve more than what your place in society allows you to. And one of the most damning evidence he brought against this is that he says he did pitch it to Disney at one point in time. I'm not sure what the proof behind that is, but he also has artwork, the concept artwork, to kind of back up the claims. And if you guys just Google the lawsuit, you could see the characters of Goldman's Zootopia versus Disney's Zootopia. So in Goldman's Zootopia, it stars a sly hyena trickster who is very, very similar to Nick Wilde. Then you have the bright-eyed bushy-tailed squirrel and our bright-eyed bushy-tailed Judy Hopps. They both have sloths. They both have little animal sidekicks who are actually more tough and gruff as they appear. So you have the koala and you have the little baby fox Toot character. And we also have a buff bear versus Chief Bogo. So a lot of little things are very, very similar between the two characters. I'm not sure how much of them are similar in the original script and how much of them were fudged to try to fit the final version of Zootopia. Because there is a similar case involving DreamWorks where one guy brought to court, tried to make a lawsuit that DreamWorks Kung Fu Panda copied his original script, and he showed the characters he had in his original script and tried to fudge them so that background characters in his original story were now made main characters because they're similar to the main characters of the Kung Fu Panda movie. So that's what I'm thinking is happening. I just think that this guy probably had a bunch of characters designed in this world, and he fudged them around, so he took what were the main characters of Zootopia and tried to find background characters in his script.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
counterparts.
say, because I've seen some of the artwork, and first of all, some of it is like a little bit of a stretch, what could be considered to be based off of his art that was used in Zootopia. But aside from that, even the relationships between the characters in Zootopia didn't really seem to be mirrored by his idea, or at least it didn't really go into much detail on that. And it's the type of thing where it's like, if we look at the examples he used, it's like instead of a fox and a bunny, he used a hyena and a squirrel. Now, a fox and a bunny, I understand understand that relationship immediately because foxes hunt and eat bunnies in the real world.
Yes.
But a hyena and a squirrel, what do those have to do with each other, right? So it almost seems like what could be happening is he's sort of reverse engineered characters from Zootopia and sort of put it onto, regardless of whether these characters already existed on his end. Maybe he did draw these characters, but it's like you chose these characters that there's no reason these should have anything to do with each other. In Zootopia, they make sense. In your idea, they don't as much. So it seems almost like you sort of, like I said, reverse engineered the plot from Zootopia and tried to sort of retroactively apply it to your own work.
Yes. So this is something that you see a lot in a lot of lawsuits that are brought up involving storyline. Now, the problem with such lawsuits is you can't really copyright or trademark a story because stories are free for you to kind of play around with. It's only specific characters that you could have protection in either a trademark or copyright, which are distinct things, but you could either trademark or copyright characters to protect them. So that might not fly. The only thing that would probably give his lawsuit legitimacy if his claim that he actually did write a treatment for his Zootopia and he submitted his treatment and synopsis to Disney Animation, and if there's proof that they actually saw it, then there might be some claim in his story. That's actually the reason why some authors and TV show writers are okay with fan fiction. They're not legally allowed to read fan fiction. So, for example, J.K. Rowling says it's okay if you guys write fan fiction, but I don't want to read it and I can't read it. I guess since a lot of you are bronies, a good example is if you wrote a fan fiction about My Little Pony, and coincidentally there was a very, very similar story in a MLP episode, and there was proof that one of the writers actually did read your fan fiction, then you could actually bring that to court. That's why there's that legal distinction between them. So it is very, very interesting because even though it's very, very similar themes, very, very similar ideas, you cannot copyright or trademark it, or else that would mean, The Prestige and The Illusionist would not be allowed to be made, even though they were both Victorian era magician movies that came out around the same time. You see this happen a lot in fiction. Remember when Escape from New York and Madagascar came out? Two movies about animals escaping the zoos? You have a lot of stuff like that. Yeah. Or
I always thought one was ripping off the other, but I never looked into it.
Yeah. Or, for example, when DreamWorks made Ants and Pixar made
A Bug's Life.
Big Bug's Life. Both movies,
that's another
3D
really good
movies
example.
starring ants. So you cannot, you can't copyright these things. Or even right now, you have the Pixar movie Choco, which deals with the Day of the Dead themes. The Other World, the protagonist is a young boy who plays guitar. Very, very similar to The Book of Life, which also was a movie that deals with the Day of the Dead and, young boy playing guitar, other worlds and ghosts and whatnot. So, yeah, it wouldn't fly, I would say, based on this clause. There is nothing transformative about his original case or what Disney did. The only problem, I would say, is normally in these situations, the big companies like Disney always wins. So I did bring up the example of the Air Pirates a few years back in the 70s. I think the Air Pirates had a legitimate reason and excuse, but the judge didn't see it that way. So Disney normally wins in these cases, so even if they bring it up, he's not going to lose. In fact, he even referenced examples of other works that Disney has copied and they got away with. So, for example, you have the famous Disney movie Lion King. It was a blatant copy of Tezuka's Kimba the White Lion. Kimba and Simba sound exactly the same.
That's right. I remember that one too.
Goldman also brings up Toy Story copied Jim Henson's A Christmas Toy. I haven't seen that movie, but could be true. Monsters Inc. copied Another Story. So there's a lot of things, but these stories, that's what Disney does. All their movies, Snow White, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, all come
it's all
from
folk
stories.
tales and Brothers Grimm and things that were in the public domain, basically, that they've just now become the most iconic iteration of, essentially.
Yeah. So I don't think there's any real claims unless the treatment, it comes out that they actually did see his treatment. Then we'll see how it goes. But don't worry about that, guys, right now.
So we'll have to see what there is to come, I suppose. Well, guys, this is just about the end of the podcast. But before we go, just one other really exciting thing to talk about. Choco and I are both going to be at Everfree Northwest in May.
Yes.
So that's going to be May 12th to the 14th, Everfree Northwest in Seattle, Washington. It is actually Choco's birthday weekend, which is awesome. Yep. But we're both going to be there. And if you happen to be going, we are going to have our very first live episode of Zootopia Minute right there at Everfree. It's going to be on Saturday. So if you're going to Everfree, please come and check it out. We would love to meet you guys in person. So that's something very much to look forward to.
And we will have a special guest at
will.
our first live episode, so keep an eye out for that, who our special guest will be. And again, it's my birthday Friday of that con, so be sure to say hi and tell me happy birthday. So
Yes, indeed.
there we go. Exciting stuff.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Zootopia Minute. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at Zootopia Minute. And we still want to keep doing our mailbag. So if you do have anything you would like to send to us, you can send that to zootopiaminute@gmail.com. Any thoughts you have, any comments you want to tell us about the podcast or anything really, send them to that address and maybe they'll get read on the show. But again, guys, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate your time and we hope to see you soon.
All right. Bye.